This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We have got a delightful slate of wild card games coming up this weekend in the NFL. We're going to break down those games with Dr. Ed Feng, getting his read on the betting markets right now at FanDuel Sportsbook and letting you know where he sees value across this weekend's key games. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Thursday by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work on Twitter at the Power Rank and find him at thepowerrank.com as well. Ed, you're wearing your Michigan hat as Michigan was the victor on Monday. Fantastic game for your Wolverines. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was up a little bit too late on Monday night celebrating after the game. I did not go to bed at 11:30, but don't really win the national championship every day, so you have to enjoy it. I thought, the first half kind of turned out exactly like I thought. Michigan was able to run the ball, and then it got a little tight in the third quarter, but Michigan's defense played a lot better than I thought they could. I thought they were tremendous. The defensive line did such an amazing job against a great Washington offensive line. So, everything worked out, and everyone in Ann Arbor was pretty happy by the middle of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was a fun game, and it was one of those where the sentiment on Twitter was, okay, Washington has gotten destroyed in the first half, but they're down just a couple of points. And I feel like in those situations, if you are looking at the stats and realizing a team is dominated, you should probably bank on regression for them in the second half, positive regression, in the sense that if Michigan is dominating the first half, but the score is tight, then you should probably expect them to play better in the second half, get better results, because it seemed like there was a lot of fluky stuff that broke against Michigan in the first half. There was the fourth down, failed conversion. There were some other things that broke against them. It kind of felt like it was a spot where if you were on Michigan and thought they had played well in the first half, you should be looking at laying the points, because it was 7.5 at halftime. And it was the score was 7 points. I know Washington got the ball, but it seemed like the overall sentiment was it'd be a tight second half, even though watching the game, it didn't feel that way in the first half.
Right, for sure. I think, the defense played pretty well. Michigan's defense played pretty well in the first half as well. My numbers actually had Washington. I mentioned on the show that I did not like that, would actually lean the other way. It did move a little bit towards Michigan before it closed, before the game kicked off. So, I think everything was great. I had Tage Seth give out the under, which also my numbers didn't like, and that looked kind of bad in the first quarter. But again, the Michigan defense just played great, as good as they could have, and it's going to be interesting to see. I think there are some there's going to be some NFL not stars, but there's going to be some NFL contributors from that defense, and now right now none of them are rated that high on big boards. Like there's no surefire first rounders on that defense. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, I think the way that unit has played, there has to be NFL talent on that team. We'll see who it is, whether it's Chris Jenkins, whether it's Will Johnson, the cornerback, whether it's a player that comes out this year or maybe next year. It'll be interesting to follow that.
I was going to say the stars of the defense were two guys who are not eligible for the draft yet. The interior linemen, they were the guys who were getting Penix off platform, disrupting the game quite a bit, and they're both true sophomores. So I think that's where your star talent is. Next year's big board may look a bit different for that Michigan defense as well. Right. So congrats to Michigan. Fun season, fun year, hopefully a profitable one for all of you as well. We'll shift our focus and talk some NFL here in just 1 second to get you ready, going through key wildcard games and letting you know where Ed sees value for this week. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. I had my first look at this slate back on Monday, breaking down where my numbers showed value for this week. We'll also have a player prop episode with JJ Zachariason coming up tomorrow right here in this exact same feed. So make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And you can also find this show on FanDuel TV Plus and the FanDuel YouTube page. When it comes to the NFL playoffs, you've got to win one game at a time. When you bet the NFL playoffs on FanDuel, one game can mean a lot of wins. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, has all your favorite bets like the money line and spread, and there's all sorts of prop bets like quarterback passing yards or who will score the first touchdown. Plus, every day there's an NFL playoff game. FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay. That means when you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payday, you'll get bonus bets back if your SGP doesn't win. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont. Welcome to you, Vermont, as of today. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WIN in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming, or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. Now, Ed, before I dig into some of the playoff games this weekend, I did want to talk to you about your overall process of the playoffs. Any tweaks for you when you're betting things when we go to the postseason versus what you do during the regular season?
No tweaks for me. I mean, you have the same players out there like you do during regular season games. It's not like an NBA situation where stars are going to play more. It's pretty much the same process for me. We can talk a little bit about keeping priors in and stuff like that. Usually I do. There are 2 teams this year that I've gotten rid of them for, and we'll talk about one of them. So that's a little bit different for me this year. And I think it makes sense. I think sometimes you just have to say that this team is completely different from what we thought, and what we thought of them, on September 4th or whenever the day before the season kicked off, just kind of doesn't really apply right now. In most cases it does, but in some cases it doesn't. Oh, I mean, I guess the prior has been thrown out when you have a different quarterback as well. So,
right.
So that applies to a team like Cleveland, but yeah. So those are process changes, but it's not like it's any different than it was week 17 when I was using the same type of numbers.
Right, for sure. I think from a non-spread and total perspective, the other key change is that props are up earlier this week than they are typically, at least at FanDuel. Yep. Typically, FanDuel's on Friday, but they were up earlier on this week. So if you are a prop person and you want to make sure you're getting the most efficient or the least efficient lines, I should say, look earlier. Those are up, going up earlier in the week. So if you want to bet some props, you can do so earlier in the week than you can during the regular season, just because there's less on the traders' minds and stuff like that. So I think that's the other key difference is if you want to bet some props, check out props. Not sure on your interception prop set. I didn't check on those, but maybe getting those up. Okay. So interception props up as well. So that's the other tweak is checking out props earlier in the week in order to get the least efficient lines. Let's talk about
quick, Jim. It's interesting. I was looking at those this morning. There's actually not an interception prop up for Jalen Hurts. We're not talking about that game, but he does have a finger issue.
He does. And AJ Brown's not practicing Thursday.
Yeah. What's that?
AJ Brown's not practicing Thursday either.
Right. And I feel almost certain that those 2 guys are going to play, just knowing them as players. But it's also interesting to me that the books haven't put up markets. I don't know about Brown, but they haven't put up markets for Hurts.
I've been staring at I have the Bucks in this game, and I've been waiting to get some movement in my favor, and I've not. It's moved against me. It hasn't happened yet.
Let's see what happens before kick.
Yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't moved. Based on Hurts saying he hasn't thrown a football since Sunday, I thought we might get some movement, but it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see where things go as we get into Monday. Let's start off with Saturday, though. Talk about the Peacock game. We got the Dolphins at the Chiefs in a very chilly Kansas City on Saturday night. Right now, it is the Chiefs -4.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Total in this game is 44.5. And Ed, it's been a rough year for the Chiefs overall this year, but I think when you look at the actual numbers behind the Chiefs, people might be surprised that they've been better than what we've perceived them to be. So what's your view of the Chiefs heading into this game and the playoffs?
I feel like it's the same story we've been talking about for the latter half of the season. The defense has been great, but we know that defensive performance tends to be volatile. Do I think their defense can continue to be good? Sure. Am I as sure about that as I would be about offensive performance? Probably not. Kansas City offense has been a little bit disappointing, but when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid coaching them up, and you have a guy like Rashee Rice that is starting to emerge as a star, that they have the potential to get the job done. I think the most interesting part about this game is the other side of the ball. What Miami's doing, and we kind of talked about whether Miami's defense was getting better late in the season. I'm not really sure that that's the case because they've been pretty bad the last 2 weeks. Baltimore had a 68% passing success rate, and that was without Mark Andrews, one of their key weapons. Buffalo at 56%. The NFL average is about 41. And they're just so banged up on that side of the ball. I mean, there's just so many injuries. I don't even know where to start. It's a bad Miami defense. I think the matchup is there for the Chiefs. My numbers actually make this Chiefs by about 5.5. That actually doesn't include any type of bonus for having a bye week because a lot of their key players didn't sit last week. I usually use bye week is an interesting thing in the NFL because when you want to do it correctly and you want to, you don't want to just say what is a bye week from now until 2000, right? And when you do the analysis, it's you get that it's about a point or 0.8 points or something like that. But the error bars are just huge. They're like about a point. So we're not completely sure that bye week advantage exists. I still use it in my model. I would probably throw another half point on there. So I actually think there's a little bit of value in Chiefs here. I know it's a little bit, that seems a little crazy with some of the struggles that they've had, but it's just that, this Miami defense is not good. And I do see a lot of cases where Kansas City can run away with this.
I think they can run away with it. And I also think that they keep this game low scoring, both because of their defense and because of the fact that they can run the football both as a team, but also I think against this Dolphins defense, the edge rushers matter for the pass rush, but they also matter in terms of rush defense. And it's not like the Dolphins have excelled there overall this year to begin with. And the thesis of a Vic Fangio defense is stop the pass. You don't want teams to beat you downfield. The forte is not typically stopping the ground game. So I think we'll see actually both teams be pretty efficient on the ground here. So I like the under at 44.5. I've got this at 41.9, and temperature is not in my model. Maybe it should be. I don't know. I don't care what the temperature is. That's about wind. And that's part of why the temperature has gotten discussion this week is because the wind chill is very low because wind speeds now are 14 miles per hour. Once you put in 14 mile per hour winds, you get this above a key number of 44. That makes it pretty intriguing to me. So it sounds like we're both overall a bit down on this Dolphins offense too. It's not just that their defense isn't great, but I do think that they have good numbers overall this year, but it just feels weird to view the Dolphins offense such an afterthought now. And I'm doing it too. It just feels weird that we've written them off because I have too. And I just don't know how to turn them around at this point.
I may have written them off, but my model certainly hasn't. I mean, it's using numbers from the entire season where it says that, their passing success rate is only a takeoff of where San Francisco is. That's all in there. And I still, I still have Kansas City by 5.5 and probably more with the bye. So, write them off a little bit. I still think they can be explosive. Can they certainly score? Sure. But we need to see it. And I would lean the other way.
All right. So Ed likes the Chiefs minus 4.5 at minus 110. And I like the under 44.5 at minus 120 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's also 44 most other spots. So if you don't want to lay the minus 120, could do that instead, but that means you push on a key number of 44. Let's talk now about the two fun Sunday games, beginning with the Packers at the Cowboys, where as of a couple of minutes ago, about 10 minutes ago, here on Thursday, it's now a 7-point spread. Dallas minus 7. It was 7.5 before. It's now 7. Total in this game is 50.5. And this Packers defense has been brutal, Ed, but the offense has been, I think, really, really good so far this year. So can they do enough here on offense to keep pace and cover the spread against Dallas?
Yeah, I think Green Bay's offense is the most interesting thing I've seen in the NFL in a while. So let's break it down a little bit. They lost to Pittsburgh week 10. They had a 3-6 record. And by my adjusted passing success rate, they were 25th. So that's pretty terrible. I looked again. My numbers haven't been showing much value on Green Bay, so I haven't been following their numbers week by week. But after this past week beating Chicago, they actually ranked 6th in my adjusted passing success rate for the season. And that's kind of insane. I mean, we know they've been playing well, 6-2 record. They make the playoffs. All of a sudden, Jordan Love has gone from question mark to maybe this guy's the answer. Maybe he's the third of a line of quarterbacks for the franchise. I decided to go back in and so everything I do now breaks it down by quarterback, right? And so it's pretty easy to go back into the data and assign Jordan Love 1 and Jordan Love 2 to separate the first 10 weeks from the last part of the season. And the results are insane. They actually have an expected passing success rate of 50.6% against an average defense. So again, the NFL average is 42%. That's actually better than San Francisco's been for the season, who's number 1 in my passing success rate. And you also have to there's almost certainly passing success rate is going to be the most predictive stat going forward. So there's that going for it. But then also you got to look that this is a first year starter in Jordan Love, and it's not like he's got an established set of receivers there either. He's throwing to people like Bo Melton, who's a second year player, got his first target a couple weeks ago. Jalen Reed, who's a rookie, at least he was a second round pick. It's not. There's definitely some noise in here. But I thought it was remarkable that Green Bay's offense has been better than been the best in the league since week 10. So it's a little bit crazy. Anyways, overall, my numbers actually like Dallas by about 6.3 points in here. Definitely saw some value at Pack plus 7.5. Yes, the defense is terrible, but defensive performance is volatile. So when you're worse than the NFL, the expectation is which way you're going to go. It's probably up. It's probably getting better. Offensive performance, especially passing success rate, tends to be sticky, and that's where they've been really good the last part of the season. So, probably not a lot of value Green Bay plus 7, but I do think that's the side that I would lean.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the numbers on Jordan Love, and Jordan Love is not a guy I was super high on entering the NFL or entering this year specifically, but you look at the numbers and how do you dismiss him at this point, given how well they played? And you were talking about first half of the year versus second half of the year, which makes sense because he's a first-time starter, getting more comfortable and stuff like that. He was efficient early in the year, but based on fluky plays, so the success rate there would have been lower. But then second half of the year, he's had that high success rate, even with constantly changing pieces in his skill guys. Luke Musgrave lacerated his kidney at one point. Christian Watson has missed a good chunk of those games. Jaden Reed has missed halves of certain games. They've had a lot of injuries, and yet the constant has been efficiency out of Jordan Love the entire time. So when I look at that, and my numbers show value, I've got the Cowboys minus 5.5 in this game. I'm willing to believe it. And I love the Cowboys. I think they're a very good offense, especially when they're at home. They're playing indoors. They can cook when they're in that situation. I like the Cowboys a lot, but I think when the Packers were plus 7.5, they were the proper side in this game despite that. So I agree with you. I think that we have to give all due respect to this Packers offense, appreciate what they've done. And honestly, I'm having a hard time being skeptical of them going forward because it's been a long sample and they're now getting healthier on offense, which is a pretty rare combination.
For sure. You think about how the markets react, right? This market is pretty much in line with my numbers, which are based on season-long averages. And for the NFL, I believe that is the right thing to do. If this were a college game this Green Bay or, the type of performance we've seen out of LSU this year, this game would be like Dallas minus 3.
Yeah.
So that's probably not the correct answer. I mean, with how bad Green Bay's answer is, with how bad Green Bay's defense is, but it's interesting to think about the different ways that you make these point spreads. I do tend to believe on my season long averages, and I think that's the right way to go, but you do need to put that in context. do need to understand that Jordan Love's a first-year quarterback. You know, maybe we are getting some strong signal in the second half of the season, and I mean that's why the lean is on the Packers.
Yeah, I think that they are a fun team that I want to buy into with where things stand right now. I also would say that despite the fact this total is very high, I'm actually in line with it. I'm at 49.5, which is close enough to the total where I think that we should see a pretty fun game on Sunday. Similar thing could be said about the Sunday night game. Total in this one for the Rams and the Lions, 51.5. I've got 48.8, so not quite that high, but still very, very high for a game with a tight spread. So it's arrows up, baby. We get to watch the Lions and the Rams, Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff in this one right now. Lions are 3-point favorites. The -3 is -118 on the Lions here. So, Ed, when you look at this game, it could be a lot of fun. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I think it is going to be a lot of fun, but maybe not so much for Lions fans. This is a game in which, for the Rams, I just don't believe that the preseason prior matters anymore. Preseason, we thought this was a bottom 5 team, a very fragile team with a quarterback like Matthew Stafford that could get hurt. You know, we saw how bad they were last year. A team that's built on stars, and then a couple injuries can mess with those stars. He came into the season, and Cooper Kupp was going to be hurt for first month of the season. We thought this was a bottom 5 team. This is clearly not a bottom 5 team. You have Cooper Kupp back, although his numbers have been down. Stafford's been great, and Puka Nacua has been the biggest revelation at receiver for a while, especially for a low round pick. If you look at his numbers, you look at his targets, I mean, there's basically no way to look at that guy and not say he's been an absolute revelation this year. Their defensive numbers have been pretty good as well. And then you look at the Detroit side. Yeah, their offense has been amazing. But Sam Laporta seemed like he absolutely wasn't going to play after he got injured last week. There's a chance he might play, the rookie tight end who's been great. So that's actually good news that he's only listed as questionable. Cleve Raymond is also listed as questionable. Amon-Ra St. Brown is clearly the primary guy on that offense, but you really don't want to lose those two guys in such a critical playoff game against the Rams defense that, is at least NFL average, if not better. They're actually better in my passing success rate numbers, but that's probably a little bit fluky. And, the worst unit out on the field is going to be the Lions defense. This is a bottom 10 unit by the numbers. I find it hilarious that Aaron Glenn is getting interviews for head coaching positions, because I don't feel like anyone has looked at how this defense is done over the past 3 years, because it hasn't been good. They do get safety CJ Gardner-Johnson back. They got him back last week. Looks like he is back. That should help. But I don't know. I mean, it's not a great spot for the Lions, even though they have this home game as the division winner. What do I have? I think I have the Rams by like a point. I have the Lions by about a point and a half, something like that. So showing value on the Rams, I do think that is the right side. Obviously better when this was Rams plus 3.5, but still a little bit of value here. Could be a rough night in Detroit.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the +3 right now on the Rams is -104 at FanDuel Sportsbook. And I get it. I'm in line with the market here. I've got Lions -3.7. So pretty much aligned with where FanDuel Sportsbook has it, given that it's -118 on the -3. But I also do worry about that number, and I'm skeptical of it, which is why I've not bet this game either way, because I think the Rams have played a lot better down the stretch this year. I think they're kind of similar to the Packers, honestly, in a weird way, where you were talking about how, if you look at what they did in the second half of the year, they're a much better team, but the Rams got Kyren Williams back second half of the year. Cooper Kupp has looked better. I still think he's like kind of banged up still, honestly. But like when they took down the Browns defense on the road, and then the next week went 2 weeks later, faced the Ravens on the road, moving the ball in both those defense. I think they put up 30 in both those games.
Right.
That said to me that this Rams team was legitimate on offense and good enough on defense. Like, they kept comeback player of the year Joe Flacco in check. What else could they possibly do to prove that they're legitimate? So I haven't bet this one. I'm not going to bet this one as far as the side goes, because I think that the Rams have shown a lot of improvement. And to me, I think they're a legitimately very good team that I don't really want to bet against right now. For
sure. I completely agree with that. And the idea that it's not out of the question that the Packers are alive in the playoffs ahead of Detroit past this weekend.
Yeah.
And the idea that could possibly happen a couple months ago is just kind of
Right.
insane. Like, obviously, it's more likely that Detroit wins and Green Bay doesn't, but it's not out of the question that Green Bay goes further in the playoffs. So interesting turn of events. And this is just not the best matchup for Detroit, and the injury situation makes it worse.
Yeah. They would need Gardner Johnson to be a legit difference maker right away to get there. Because, like, if you look at their early season numbers, their first couple weeks, they were okay defensively, like the first 4 or so weeks. And then the injuries piled up, not just CJ Gardner Johnson, though. There were other ones, too, that happened. And so it's not – I don't think that getting him back will be the cure-all for those woes that they've shown.
Yeah, and, like, everyone was very excited bringing in Emmanuel Mosley and Cam Sutton to play the cornerback position. Mosley's been hurt like he always is. And Cam Sutton's been bad. He's played almost every snap, and he's been bad. Yeah. So can he magically turn it around? Well, I mean, the Lions really need that to happen.
Yeah. As a person who grew up a Jets fan, I do root for Aaron Glenn. I wanted to do well. It's upsetting to me to see that he has gray hair now because I grew up like rooting for this guy pretty hard. So I want him to do well. He was graded as like the most liked defense coordinator. The Athletic did like a survey with the NFLPA. Right. He was number one. Coach. Yeah, players coach. It can be tough when the talent in their secondary is not great, but that's not changing. So,
but maybe he is a great defensive coordinator, and the Lions would be so much worse if it weren't for his tactical genius on that side of the ball, given the talent that he's got.
Yeah. I just want to see my guy thrive. So hopefully he's back in Detroit next year with some better talent. He can actually show what he's got back there. That's all we got for today here on Covering the Spread. But Ed, I am loving the way things are setting up for next round, the divisional round. I think it's going to be an absolute blast. Hopefully, you can get the Rams +3, get that win, but then the Lions advance, keep the good vibes flowing in Michigan for the next couple of weeks as well. What is going on for you this week over at the Power Rank?
I had a great conversation with Cleve TA. He is a NFL analyst, runs Cleve Analytics. Asked him a lot about Joe Flacco because he's a Cleveland fan and analyst. He actually said some really interesting things about their defense as well, how to beat it. So check that out on the Football Analytics Show, wherever you get your podcasts. And then I'm still writing my free email newsletter. Check that out at thepowerrank.com. If you're looking for action on any given weekend, I publish 5 Nuggets Saturday. And I've been thinking about it, Jim. Like the newsletter is kind of the only form that really, it makes it possible because I try to put props in there, and a lot of that stuff during the regular season doesn't happen until Friday night if I'm trying to curate from other people. Right. So it's one of these things where it would be really hard to do a video show or a pod, but the newsletter kind of works. I'm able to put it together. It comes out Saturday at 10 a.m. We'll definitely have a nice array of bets in there this week, especially. It'll probably be only NFL this week because it's wild card weekend. But check that out at thepowerrank.com.
And Saturday 10 a.m. is more than enough time to get your Isaiah Pacheco props in before he goes bananas on Saturday night for the Chiefs against the Dolphins. Find Ed on Twitter at The Power Rank. You can find that newsletter by going to thepowerrank.com and check out the podcast as well, the Football Analytics Show, wherever you get your podcasts. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonis, and you can follow FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Good luck to all of you across this weekend. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down some player props with JJ Zacharies, and this has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.